Welcome to my channel. Here, we pull back the curtain on the figures who changed the course of history. We'll dive deep into their lives and retell their stories in a way that takes you to the heart of the action, experiencing details you've never heard before. The story began in an era where the night had no master, and cities donned a cloak of pitch darkness as soon as the sun bid the horizon farewell. For thousands of years, humans lived as prisoners to flickering candlelight and smoky oil lanterns that barely revealed the features of the path ahead. Night was a space of fear and stagnation where life came to a complete halt and movement became an uncalculated risk. In this gloomy atmosphere, humanity was waiting for someone to break the chains of darkness and grant them the ability to pursue dreams after midnight, unaware that this savior had already been born in a small village called Milan. On February 11th, 1847, Ohio witnessed the birth of a small child named Thomas Alva Edison, the seventh and final son of a modest family. From his early years, Thomas was not an ordinary child. He possessed an unquenchable curiosity and an eye that observed the smallest details of nature in a majestic silence. He was not satisfied with merely seeing things. He always wondered how and why, which led many to misunderstand his deep calmness. This child, who suffered from hearing loss, began to build his own world within his vast imagination, away from the noise of others who did not realize the scale of genius hidden behind his quiet features. When Thomas turned 8, he enrolled in school for the first time, but his experience there was as brief and painful as it was decisive for his future. After only 3 months, he returned home with a letter describing his mind as addled and unteachable, prompting teachers to demand his removal. His mother, Nancy, was deeply affected, but did not give in to despair. She looked into her son's eyes and decided to be his teacher, his muse, and his fortress against the world's frustrations. She believed her son possessed an extraordinary mind, so she began homeschooling him, instilling a love for reading and research, transforming that failed child in society's eyes into a global genius project. In the dark basement of his home, Thomas Edison began building his first real laboratory, collecting chemical vials and copper wires purchased with his meager savings. He spent long hours mixing solutions and observing reactions, ignoring the pungent smells and smoke that filled the air, driven by a passion that knew no bounds. His mother watched from afar, encouraging him at times and warning him at others, but she never stopped him from his experiments, which sometimes ended in small explosions. In that basement, Thomas didn't just learn chemistry. He learned that failure is not the end of the road, but merely an experimental result needing analysis and development to reach the truth. As time passed, Thomas realized his scientific experiments needed constant funding, so at the age of 12, he decided to sell newspapers and candy on the Grand Trunk Railway. He wasn't just an ordinary newsboy. He used his time on the train to set up a small printing press and publish his own newspaper, which became popular among passengers. With unmatched brilliance, he persuaded officials to let him move his chemical lab into the train's baggage car, continuing his experiments while traveling between cities. This stage was his true school in time and money management, where he learned to balance scientific passion with practical market needs to secure his future. Edison's journey on the Grand Trunk Railway did not end peacefully. One day, due to the train's vibration, a phosphorus vial fell and ignited a fire in his small lab inside the baggage car. The fire spread quickly, prompting the train conductor to intervene violently. He struck Thomas across the ears and threw him and his equipment off the train at the next station. It is believed that this blow was the main cause of his permanent deafness. However, with an unbreakable spirit, Edison considered his hearing loss a blessing rather than a curse. He used to say that silence granted him the ability to focus deeply on his thoughts without distraction from the noisy outside world, turning a physical disability into a lethal mental weapon. In a fateful moment that completely changed the course of his life, Thomas was standing at a train station when he saw a small child fall onto the tracks in front of a speeding freight train. Without hesitation, Edison jumped and saved young Jimmy Mackenzie at the very last second, risking his life for a stranger. The child's father was the station master, who felt indescribable gratitude toward this brave young man and decided to reward him with his most precious skill, teaching him the art of telegraphy. This opportunity was the gateway through which Edison entered the world of electrical pulses, finding in Morse code a new language that bypassed his need for hearing and connected him to the technologies that would later reshape global communications. Edison spent his early youth traveling across the United States as a wandering telegraph operator, living a simple and unstable life, yet one filled with scientific inquiry. He accepted tiring night shifts for one reason only: to secure hours of quiet for reading and dismantling telegraph machines to understand their internal mechanics. He spent most of his meager salary on books and second-hand tools, preferring hunger over giving up his dream of inventing something new. During those long nights, he began developing his first improvements to transmission machines, turning every workstation into a small laboratory, where he tested electricity's capacity to transmit information faster and with greater accuracy. In 1869, at the age of 21, Edison received his first official patent for an electric vote recorder. He thought this invention would revolutionize politics by speeding up the counting process and ensuring its integrity. But he faced an unexpected shock when politicians refused to use it. They told him that slowness in counting is part of the political game, which taught Edison a business lesson he would never forget. From that moment on, he decided never to waste his time inventing something people didn't want or the market didn't need, setting commercial utility as an essential requirement for any idea he chose to pursue in the future. Thomas Edison arrived in New York City in 1869 with only a few cents in his pocket, completely broke and searching for any job to survive. He slept in the basement of the Gold Indicator Company for several days, and there a miracle occurred that changed his destiny. The main machine transmitting gold prices to the exchange broke down, causing mass chaos among investors. While senior engineers failed to fix the glitch, the strange young man, Edison, stepped forward with intelligence and calm, repairing the device in record time. The company manager was so impressed by his skill that he hired him immediately at a high salary, making this incident the spark that launched his name in New York as one of the brightest young technical minds. Edison was not satisfied with being an employee. He began developing the quadruplex telegraph, a stunning innovation that allowed 4 messages to be sent simultaneously over a single wire instead of just one. This invention represented a massive fortune for telecommunications companies because it saved the cost of laying thousands of miles of copper wire. When he entered negotiations to sell the invention, he hoped to get $3,000, but he was shocked when Western Union offered him $40,000. This was his first real fortune, and instead of spending it on luxury, he invested it entirely in building his ultimate dream, a research laboratory where the work never stopped. In 1876, Edison moved to a quiet rural town in New Jersey called Menlo Park, where he established the first industrial research laboratory in human history. It was not just a workplace. It was an integrated system aimed at transforming invention from a stroke of luck into an organized, continuous industrial process. Edison gathered an army of chemists, machinists, and mathematicians from around the world, providing them with the latest tools and raw materials available. In this lab, Edison led his team with a clear vision, working as one body to turn theoretical ideas into tangible products that could change millions of lives, marking the beginning of the most productive years of his life. While working on improving the telegraph, Edison had a crazy idea. What if we could record the human voice and play it back later? After weeks of grueling experiments, he succeeded in inventing the phonograph, a simple device using a needle to etch sound vibrations onto a cylinder covered in tinfoil. The moment Edison spoke the words, "Mary had a little lamb," and heard his voice bounce back was the moment the entire world was stunned. People couldn't believe a human voice could be recorded. Some thought it was a magic trick. From this, he was nicknamed the Wizard of Menlo Park, becoming the first human in history to tame sound and make it immortal. In 1878, Edison decided to tackle the greatest technical challenge of his era, creating a safe and continuous electric light for domestic use. At that time, existing lamps were either blindingly bright and noisy carbon arcs or failed experiments that burnt out within minutes. Edison boldly announced to the press that he would light up the world in months, a statement that caused gas and candle company stocks to plummet instantly. He realized the bulb wasn't just glass and a filament. It was part of an entire electrical system that needed to be invented from scratch, marking the start of the epic search for a filament that wouldn't break under the heat of electricity. The Menlo Park laboratory turned into a hive that never slept as Edison and his team engaged in a marathon of experiments to test materials for the bulb's filament. They tried everything imaginable: cotton thread, linen, paper, wood fibers, and even human hair and beard hair. Edison meticulously recorded every failure, insisting to his frustrated assistants that they hadn't failed, but had successfully discovered materials that didn't work, a part of the scientific method. Nights stretched into dawn amidst smoke and heat, with filaments snapping and vanishing as soon as the current passed. Yet Edison's resolve grew stronger with every exploding bulb. After thousands of grueling attempts, Edison came up with the idea of using a carbonized cotton thread inside a vacuum-sealed glass bulb. On a historic night, everyone inside the Menlo Park lab held their breath as they watched the bulb glow with a soft, steady orange light. The bulb stayed lit for an hour, then 2, then 10, until it surpassed 13.5 hours. This wasn't just light, it was an official declaration of the defeat of darkness. In that moment, Edison and his team knew they hadn't just changed technology. They had changed how humans would live forever, as night became a time for work and socializing, not just for sleep. Despite the success of the first bulb, Edison was searching for a filament that would last hundreds of hours to make it commercially viable. He sent his agents to the Amazon rainforests and the mountains of Japan in search of unique plant fibers, finally finding his prize in a special type of Japanese bamboo. After carbonizing this bamboo, he discovered it could withstand over 1,200 hours of continuous operation. This discovery was the final piece of the light bulb puzzle, as it became a product that could be sold to the public without fear of burning out quickly. This global field research demonstrated Edison's insistence on perfection, as he wasn't satisfied with laboratory success but wanted to conquer markets with unmatched quality. Edison realized that the bulb alone was worthless without a system to power it, so he began designing the first power station on Pearl Street in New York. There was no previous blueprint to follow. He had to invent generators, switches, electricity meters, and even insulated cables buried underground. He faced the ridicule of engineers and the skepticism of the press, but he persisted in digging up the streets of Manhattan to lay his copper wires. In September 1882, Edison flipped the switch, and suddenly 400 bulbs lit up in offices and homes, marking the birth of the electric age and the transformation of New York into the first global city to bid farewell to gas lamps forever. As electricity spread, one of the fiercest battles in scientific history began: the War of Currents. Edison fiercely defended direct current, DC, in which he had invested his entire fortune, while the brilliant young Nikola Tesla, supported by George Westinghouse, emerged to promote alternating current, AC. Edison claimed Tesla's current was dangerous and deadly, launching terrifying media campaigns to smear its reputation, even going as far as performing public electrocution experiments. This battle was a mix of science, money, and personal ego, as Edison tried with all his might to protect his empire from a technology that was, in fact, more efficient for long-distance power transmission. The ambitions of the Wizard of Menlo Park didn't stop at electricity. He wanted to do for the eye what the phonograph did for the ear. In 1891, Edison invented the kinetoscope, the first device allowing motion pictures to be viewed through a peephole. Edison built the world's first movie studio, a rotating building covered in black paper called Black Maria to chase the sunlight. The first films were simple, like a man sneezing or a girl dancing, but they were enough to stun audiences seeing moving images for the first time. With this invention, Edison laid the foundation for the global film industry that would transform imagination into a tangible visual reality. As cars began appearing on the streets, Edison saw a new opportunity: creating a powerful, lightweight battery to power electric vehicles. Edison spent an entire decade and conducted over 10,000 failed experiments to arrive at the storage battery. Although gasoline cars eventually dominated, Edison's battery became vital in heavy industry, railways, and mining. This stage was the embodiment of his philosophy of hard work. He never despaired despite his advancing age, insisting that genius never retires and that failure is merely an accumulation of information that will inevitably lead to success. On a cold night in 1914, a massive fire broke out, consuming most of Edison's factories and labs in West Orange. In a single night, Edison lost millions of dollars and years of unrecorded research. While everyone was weeping, the 67-year-old Edison stood calmly and told his son, "Go get your mother. She'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, he began planning the reconstruction, asserting that there is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up, and we will start fresh tomorrow. It was this fighting spirit that made him a legend beyond being just an inventor, but a symbol of human perseverance. When World War I broke out, Edison was asked to lead the Naval Consulting Board to assist the United States with military innovations. Despite his intense hatred for weapons and destruction, he focused his research on defense. He invented devices to detect submarines underwater and methods to locate enemy cannons through sound. He believed that science should protect humanity, not annihilate it, and stipulated that he would only work on defensive inventions. This period showed Edison's patriotic side and how an inventive mind can turn into a shield protecting the nation in its darkest political and military circumstances. In his later years, Edison formed a legendary friendship with Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company. The two men would escape the noise of the factories on long camping trips in the woods, calling them gypsy trips. These trips were an opportunity for Edison to reconnect with the nature he had loved since childhood and discuss the future of technology with another brilliant mind. Ford looked up to Edison as a godfather and muse, while Edison saw in Ford the power capable of putting the world on wheels. This human friendship revealed the other side of the inventor's life, away from the noise of labs and wires. Near the end of his career, Edison recorded a record-breaking 1,093 patents in the United States alone. These numbers weren't just paperwork. They were the foundation upon which modern civilization was built, from energy and communications to entertainment. Edison established the concept of research and development, R&D, as an essential part of any successful company, showing that innovation is a continuous process requiring a team and an organized environment. Even in his 80s, he still went to the lab, believing the world was still full of secrets waiting to be discovered, leaving behind a scientific approach that is still studied in the most prestigious universities and global companies. Throughout his life, Edison fought the idea that invention was merely a flash of luck, or an innate talent that descends upon one while sitting idle. He coined his famous phrase, which became a manual for every aspirant: "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He believed the human mind is a muscle that must be trained in patience and perseverance, and that the difference between a successful inventor and a dreamer is the ability to endure exhaustion and repeat an experiment for the 1,000th time with the same enthusiasm as the first. This philosophy is what made him spend days and nights without sleep, settling for short naps on lab benches, asserting that work is the highest value of human existence. In his final years, while in his 80s, Edison did not retire to rest, but engaged in a new national challenge related to U.S. national security. The United States relied entirely on imported rubber, so Edison, with the help of his friends Ford and Firestone, decided to find a plant-based substitute that could grow locally. He tested more than 17,000 types of plants and weeds until he settled on the goldenrod plant, from which he extracted a rubber-like substance. This work was an embodiment of his loyalty to his country and a clear message that the creative mind knows no retirement age, and that necessity is always the mother of invention, even in old age. As 1931 began, the health of the Wizard of Menlo Park started to decline significantly, suffering from complications of diabetes and kidney failure. On October 18th, in his Glenmont home in New Jersey, Edison peacefully passed away at the age of 84, surrounded by his family and memories of thousands of hours of struggle. It is said that his last words while in a coma were, "It is very beautiful over there, perhaps seeing a light of a different kind yet to be discovered." With his passing, the world did not just lose an inventor. It lost the man who redefined the impossible and turned science fiction dreams into simple tools we use in our daily lives without a second thought. In appreciation of this man who lit up humanity's night, the U.S. president at the time suggested that the entire country dim its electric lights for 1 minute, coinciding with his funeral. It was a solemn and emotional moment. Major cities like New York and Chicago plunged into darkness for a few moments, making people suddenly realize the magnitude of the void Edison's absence would have left. That minute was enough for everyone to remember that every bulb burning in the streets, every sound coming from a radio, and every image moving on a screen is originally a part of the spirit of that man who refused to surrender to darkness since he was a newsboy on trains. Today, nearly a century after his passing, Thomas Edison remains present in every detail of our modern civilization. He didn't just leave us bulbs and batteries. He left us the concept of the collective laboratory, upon which today's tech giants like Apple and Google are built. His story is a constant reminder that genius is not exclusive to anyone, but belongs to those who dare to try and fail, and those who have the courage to stand up after every fall. Edison's name will remain etched in the memory of time, not just as a patent holder, but as the human who proved that human will is the only energy capable of lighting the world.